They burned the royal surgeon alive not because he botched the operation, but because he succeeded. One moment he was hailed as the man who pried death's grip from the queen's throat. The next, he was sentenced for the crime of having laid an ungloved hand on her sacred skin. Ready to see how saving a life became the most lethal mistake in the kingdom? The queen died on the banquet floor for exactly 7 minutes before a sweating barber surgeon yanked her back. Nobody could believe it, least of all Queen Aldegund herself, who woke to find 8 bishops arguing over who got to bless her corpse. An hour earlier, she had been radiant, teasing her husband King Florent over his increasingly tragic jousting belly, when a grape lodged in her windpipe. Courtiers froze. Touching the queen without permission meant forfeiting your own skin. Enter Master Gilles de Sceaux, fresh from the University of Salerno and clearly unaware that chivalry beats airway management in this court. He did the unthinkable, knocked her crown clean off, slit her throat just enough to slide a quill barrel in, and watched air whistle back. The room gasped louder than she did. Saving the queen was the easy part. Convincing the kingdom she hadn't been defiled proved surgical suicide. By sunrise, pamphlets fluttered through the capital claiming Gilles had pressed his lips to royal flesh, swapped humors, maybe stolen virtue along with the grape. The fact that half the witnesses had cheered when breath returned was promptly forgotten. No one enjoys remembering their own cowardice. The clergy roared first. If sanctity could be revived by knives and farm bird feathers, then where did that leave prayer? The nobility followed, mortified that a commoner's fingers had reached more intimate territory than their pedigrees ever would. And the Guild of Physicians, sensing an opportunity, hollered that Gilles practiced ungodly shortcuts, threatening their monopoly on leeches for everything. Even the palace laundress swore she saw him pocket the lodged grape as a trophy. King Florent thanked the surgeon with wine at breakfast and a death warrant by supper. His Majesty genuinely liked being married, an eccentricity among monarchs, but he liked stable politics more, and the bishops were frothing about desecration. Florent convened a midnight tribunal under the guise of inquiring into miraculous procedures. The defense lasted 16 breathless minutes, during which Gilles produced anatomical sketches and asked whether holiness resided in the trachea or the lungs. The prosecutor countered that God clearly preferred queens unhandled, citing Saint Clarissa, who allegedly self-resurrected without medical interference, a story nobody bothered to verify. Inside the torchlit hall, the queen, still bandaged, tried to speak, but the jury decided a woman with a slit throat shouldn't influence moral debate. Verdict: guilty of sacrilegious assault, punishment by cleansing fire. Gilles' colleagues reacted by sharpening their quills to apply for his soon-to-be vacant post. One sent a basket of cauterizing irons to the palace, stamped with his initials, Networking, Medieval Edition. A lone apothecary, money on the surgeon's innocence, tried bribing the headsman to dull the stake's nails so Gilles might die quicker. The headsman politely declined. Over time, pay didn't cover extra compassion. In the taverns, rumors evolved. Some insisted the surgeon whispered love spells while cutting. Others claimed the grape was planted to stage a romantic rescue. Because apparently regular marriage politics weren't complicated enough, speculators suggested the queen orchestrated everything for a whiff of commoner excitement. Gilles, meanwhile, sat in a dank cell, documenting the entire affair for medical posterity, pausing only to note how mildew aggravated his asthma. Ever the clinician. The execution scaffold was built from cedar imported at ruinous cost, so the smoke would smell respectable. If you're going to barbecue a man for professionalism, you might as well make it fragrant, announced the royal steward, who ordered rosemary sprigs for ambiance. Crowds surged from as far as Pellegrande, eager for a morality play with good lighting. Peddlers sold quack remedies, approved by the late Master Gilles. Half courage, half irony, all profit. The surgeon was marched out in a linen shirt deliberately dyed crimson, the hue reminding everyone whose blood had first spilled. He spotted the queen behind a lattice window, her throat still stitched with his careful cross-hatching. She raised a hand. The guards blocked the view, because nothing says gratitude like preventing a final farewell. Someone rang the cathedral bells early, as if impatience could rinse guilt. When the flames licked his ankles, Gilles began lecturing about airway obstruction, and the mob actually listened. Humans love forbidden knowledge, so long as someone else pays the tuition in pain. He explained how a hollow goose quill can bypass swelling, how quick pressure at the sternum forces expelled air, how timing matters more than titles. A friar scribbled frantically, muttering that practical notes trump theological thunder. The fire climbed to his knees. Gilles pointed out that cedar resin accelerates combustion. "File that under surgical tips, lads." Someone laughed, which only annoyed the chaplain tasked with keeping things solemn. As sparks haloed his head, he shouted, "Tell Her Majesty to avoid hard fruit for a month." Then came the final crackling roar, and knowledge turned to smoke. The first peer review process conducted in real time and promptly incinerated. 2 days later, the queen coughed blood, proving that martyrdom rarely fixes the underlying condition. The wound Gilles carved had begun to fester, thanks to every court physician swearing poultices of crushed pearls were cleaner than boiling water. Fever spiked, hallucinations set in. She claimed to see the surgeon's silhouette in torch flames, arms folded, eyebrow raised. The same clergy who condemned him now prescribed prayer marathons, effectively suffocating her again, but with incense. King Florent, frantic and suddenly allergic to public opinion, dispatched riders to find anyone who'd apprenticed under Gilles. Most had fled, convinced the kingdom valued piety over pulse. They located a half-drunk journeyman in a coastal inn who recalled the master's dictum: "Cut decisively, stitch neatly, and document everything, because someone will accuse you of witchcraft either way." He rode back clutching notes singed at the edges and smelling of cedar ghosts. The second operation happened in utter secrecy beneath the palace kitchens, between pickling vats and suspiciously curious rats. The journeyman, throat dry with terror, reopened the incision using Gilles' char-blackened sketches for guidance. Ironic, given the monarchy had just sponsored that charcoal. He suctioned pus with a silver spoon, reasoning that if the nobility trusted it for caviar, it could handle infection. An elderly nun supplied vinegar and attitude. She muttered that male egos were costlier than surgical instruments. The queen survived again, though her voice henceforth rasped like a saw over bone, reminding everyone of the price of reputation management. This time, King Florent issued no proclamations, merely a curt order. Any gossip about the procedure earned tongue removal, an inventive endorsement of patient privacy. In the capital, rumors still brewed, but now they carried a bitter aftertaste. The state had created its own ghost. Gilles' ashes did what his testimony couldn't. They spread knowledge faster than plague fleas. Children collected cinders for good luck. Apprentices traced surgical diagrams in soot on tavern walls, and traveling minstrels sang of the man who stole the queen's breath, then paid it back with fire. The church tried banning the ballad. Banning songs works about as well as banning headaches. Meanwhile, itinerant healers began carrying hollow reeds, marketing them as Gilles pipes, capable of defeating the choke demon. Because of course they did. Within a year, half the continent knew the basic trick of emergency tracheotomy, although few pronounced the word, and most performed it after 3 ales. Still, survival rates for tavern brawls improved, which is more than any sermon achieved that decade. Legacy, it turned out, travels lighter once you remove the inconvenient corpse. The king finally erected a marble plaque that thanked divine providence for preserving the queen and named no human hands. It sat opposite the scorched square where roast surgeon had once been the headline act, a tidy visual metaphor for selective memory. Tourists prayed at one monument, picnicked at the other, and occasionally failed to notice they were sitting on medical history. The Queen, voice ragged, spent her afternoons in the herb garden teaching palace midwives Gilles' airway method, passing it off as an old nun's spell. She no longer trusted titles, only results. Privately, she kept the original grape, now shriveled, in a crystal vial beside her bed, a reminder that the smallest obstruction can topple the tallest hierarchy. Every night she whispered an apology to the surgeon who'd known that all along, though she doubted the apology could reach past cedar smoke. A generation later, when another queen began choking on honeyed almonds, no one hesitated. A maid seized a lamb-bone straw, punched through the skin just under the jaw, and sucked mucus clear before anyone could summon clergy. The patient lived, the maid earned a pension, and the court chronicler coolly noted, "Method perfected under King Florent's enlightened reign." Enlightened, in this case, meant someone else had burned for the lesson. Gilles' name still hovered as rumor, like an unquiet spirit reminding physicians to carry blades sharper than politics. He became patron saint of unpopular best practices, invoked whenever innovation threatened the status quo. The irony tasted thicker than almond paste. The kingdom had outlawed the man, but institutionalized his method, proving that progress sometimes crawls forward, dragging morality by the heels. So the kingdom ended up breathing easier, but only after suffocating the man who taught it how. Centuries later, visitors stroll the former execution square, debating whether the cedar tree sapling growing there smells faintly of smoke or of overdue gratitude. Some carve goose-feather quills into its bark, a quiet protest against forgetting. Historians publish thick volumes debating whether Gilles' sentence was legal under the statutes of royal sanctity, and students skim the margins hunting for the only part that matters. Procedure saves, prejudice kills. Every time a medic wraps sterile gloves around a stranger's throat to open an airway, a little medieval ghost nods, satisfied. Knowledge outlives bonfires. It always has, it always will, and it rarely asks permission first.